Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you all once again, and if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. This is the channel where we go back and look at cartoons and movies and entertainment that we grew up on from the 80s and 90s. So if that sounds like something you might want to enjoy, I guess that makes sense. Hit that subscribe button below and click the like button while you're at it, because today we have a very special episode, a little bit of a Christmas episode. I got my tree up over here and a little sweater on because it is actually snowing outside right now as I record this where I live. Because today I'm going to be playing a conversation that I had recently over Zoom with a fellow filmmaker and Batman fan, Rob Ayling, to talk about his film, his short film, a Batman fan film that he made now just about a year ago, I think a year ago this month, called Living in Crime Alley. So I have to tell you, the way that this all came about was Rob found me through this YouTube channel. He was commenting regularly, also a big fan of Batman the Animated Series, and also a big influence for him. And we had connected in the comments and talked back and forth. And at one point he reached out to me saying that he was getting ready to make this fan film and wanted to know if I could take a look at the script. Thought, sure, I'd be happy to help out a fellow Batman fan. And he sent it over to me, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but I read through it, and I was really blown away. I've read a lot of scripts in my time, and varying degrees of quality, and this one was really good. The story was good, the dialogue was good, and I was really impressed. I don't think I had many critical notes for him to incorporate, just general praise of how good it was. I sent it back to him and wasn't sure what to expect. Shortly thereafter, I'm following him on Instagram and I'm seeing pictures from them pictures of them prepping for the shoot and getting costumes ready and making final preparations. And before long, they're on set filming this movie. And I'm watching the whole process unfold, and then it wasn't that long that he sent me a link to the movie. Again, I was just blown away. And I don't say that lightly, but it was really, really good. And here we are about a year later, and we connected again and finally got an opportunity now, as we're all using Zoom and all staying at home, we set up a time to talk. And that's what I'm going to play for you here today, is we got a chance to talk about Batman and how it was such an influence on both of us for our interest in film and making film and that style, particularly Batman the Animated Series. We dig in deep to some of our favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series and talk about his process of making this Batman film. It was just a great joy, a great thrill to have a conversation like this with somebody that I connected with through this YouTube channel. One of the great thrills about doing this YouTube channel is finding people like this that I can share and connect with, that I can truly call one of my friends. So if you haven't already, click on the link up here to see the movie in its entirety so you have some context to know what we're talking about, and then you can hop back over here and watch our conversation about the movie and about Batman. So without any further ado, enjoy my conversation with Rob Ayling. Well, you've been a big supporter of my channel for a long time, and I'm always seeing you pop up in there, and appreciate you being a part of the live streams and adding your 2 cents in there. It's been fun.
Well, it's good to meet just someone who's very passionate about the series as I am, and about Batman as well. And and that's the thing. I mean, I hope you don't mind. I wore my Christmas jumper with the two the problematic couple, shall we say, the mad love, yes. As we were. But yeah, and I've always found your videos very engaging, and you've always pointed out little things that I didn't even notice, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's you're thinking even further than I think even the writers maybe have intended as well, the creators of the show. And I just think that's when you've got something really special there, where you're going more in depth than what was intended there, and that's kind of the craft really as well.
For me, Batman the Animated Series was a show that I felt like we're still talking about it 30 plus years later, 25 or whatever it is now, that it is a testament to the production and the what they have is just, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think that's really the testament of the show, though, because, like, it was what started in 90, like 91, 92, something like
Yeah.
that. And, we're still talking about it now because, for me anyway, it is the definitive Batman that I grew up with, but also it still is the Batman for me. Every time, that's what's so genius about the show. And, it's even a remarkable show from its first introduction. I love the fact that you don't even have Batman the Animated TV series as a title card. It is, you watch that little 1 minute sequence, which is in itself like a short film, and you're like, that's Batman right there. They nail it so quickly. And, you could just watch that and over and over and over again. Not that we haven't, but, and be completely satisfied. But then it goes on for another 21 minutes and you've got this an amazing adventure.
Yeah, for me, when I think of Batman, I think of the animated series. And what I didn't realize at the time until I really was kind of looking back at it was how much that influenced my other interests, and I know I've said it on the channel before, but like the idea of the film noir and the detective and the mystery and the Art Deco and just that style of it really influenced me, that then I gravitated towards the Dick Tracy movie, which felt like in that same vein, or Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or all those things that are in that kind of 1940s realm. And I had no idea until I started tracing it back, going, no, that was because not only did that make me a huge Batman fan, but influenced my interest in movies and shows in general. And was that your experience too?
I mean, it's pretty much very similar. Yeah, like watching the Batman the Animated TV series was like the big lesson in not only TV and cartoons, but also cinema for me. And when you have a fresh pair of eyes as an adult watching these back, you realize how much they're taking from classic movies or even TV shows. And you've mentioned numerous times the Superman cartoon from the 40s. Huge influence on the animated TV series. And then you look at film noir as a genre and how much that has played into the animated TV series as well. Massive influence right there. And for me, I'm both a university and film school graduate. So, going back into, studying the lengths of cinema. So it's funny enough, I was about to say Citizen Kane. I watched Mank yesterday on Netflix. And you realize, with that film and things like Double Indemnity and the Maltese Falcon, all these classic film noirs, like the lighting and everything. It's, well, first of all, it's just gorgeous, but also how much that plays into telling the story. And, and you look back at the animated TV series and it is just, again, it's a superbly crafted show. And the idea to actually draw on black paper and color in, extraordinary.
I think that's why it's so fun to go back and watch it now, is because as a kid, I couldn't have described why I enjoyed it. I just knew I knew it was different. I knew it wasn't like a lot of the other, Disney afternoon shows that I was watching. I knew that it wasn't, Bugs Bunny and things like that. I knew it was different, but I couldn't have put my finger on it. But like you said, watching it back as an adult to start identifying those things and going, oh, I see how different that was, or how unique that was to draw on black paper and to bring out and to embrace that film noir element.
I think the best compliment I can give about Batman the Animated TV series as a whole is, even a bad episode, even if we can call it a bad episode or not, it's still a good episode.
Right. Right.
Like for me, I mean, I go backwards and forwards what I think could be. I don't even like saying the worst, because they're not terrible. They're no real bad episode. But the one I think most people would say, and I would tend to agree, is something like, I've got Batman in my basement, which is fun.
Yeah.
But it's probably too far over the kid friendly side for me,
Right.
But I do think with that episode in particular, it does go too far. But then when you've got an episode like that, and then you move on to, episodes like Heart of Ice, which is just a beautifully written episode, just through and through. The imagery alone is extraordinary enough, but the writing as well is extraordinary. And I mean, you covered that on your live chat a few weeks ago, which was a really great, again, breakdown of how important that episode is, not just for the Batman the Animated TV series, but actually for animation as a whole, because again, it broke the barriers of what a villain, or should I say an antagonist, can be. You know, there is a gray area, which is just because they're doing bad things doesn't mean they're a horrible human being. Because I feel like he's almost like a tragic Shakespearean villain, or antagonist, I should say.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly on point. Is that it's each and every element of that. You know, there's shows that I watch that I can go, oh, I appreciate the animation. I love the animation, but the story isn't there. Or, oh, the performances is great, but it doesn't have, you know, the animation isn't as good. You go on and on and on, but you watch those shows, and yeah, and I'm like you, that there's some that I don't like as well, or as much as don't stack up against the favorites, but I agree there isn't a bad episode. But it's still like there's some element, and their attention to that detail as they go through that even, you know, some of the Moon of the Wolf is one that you know, I've heard conflicting opinions on, but I watch that and I go, yeah, but as a like short horror, you know, monster serial kind of movie, it's great. You know, it feels a little bit off from what the rest of the series is, but I can still appreciate those individual elements of that. You know, you mentioned Heart of Ice, but like that influenced the comic books, and now that's part of the canon, is things that they, you know, and it's crazy to think about some of the stuff that's kind of common knowledge for us now of, you know, Mr. Freeze's origin story, or Harley Quinn, or any of the other additives that they've done from the show, but it's like, no, it took this cartoon, this kids show, to kind of influence those things.
It's funny when you mention about the writing thing as well. I think what's another major risk as well that they took, which is again so extraordinary when you think about it, is a lot of Batman the animated TV series is visual storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like the very first episode on Leather Wings is, you know, that whole like that episode alone is fantastic, because there's one scene where he just does detective work, and it's visual storytelling. You know, it's not Batman saying, "Oh, there's this on the floor, I better pick this up." You know, it's, you know, let the viewer see what this, you know, to tell the story. And I think for a kid's show as well, at that time, I think that would have been a massive risk on, you know, even the executives going, "Will a child understand what's going on here?" Or, you know, or whatever.
The thing that I appreciate about the show is that it didn't play down to kids. You know, they could have very easily made it a very kind of straightforward, let me spoon feed the audience, but they let the kids kind of catch up, and that's why I like to, you know, I prefer to say, like, I literally grew up with the show because it forced me to think about things more than just, oh, I'm just getting fed a bunch of, you know, noises and images. But it was, you know, you had to watch and pay attention and think about it. And, you know, and I remember as a kid watching some of these episodes multiple times and picking up on different things, you know, that I didn't notice before, and going, wow, they really, you know, that there is that detail, or that hint was in there about that clue, and that's how it's revealed. Or especially the Riddler episodes, where I remember trying to figure out the riddles right along with Batman, and it very much felt like they were it was made for kids, but they were treating kids like adults.
I'm so glad you brought up the Riddler there, because funny enough, the very first episode I watched of Batman the Animated TV series was, "If you're so smart, why aren't you rich?"
Yeah.
And when you watch that as an adult now, my God, there's so many layers to that. You know, it's, you know, even if I was in the Riddler, if I was Edward Nygma's shoes, in his shoes, I would feel exactly the same way. I would, and perhaps, you know, I don't say I would, but perhaps we would snap like that. You know, right. Maybe we would put on a jazzy green suit and a bowler cap. You never know. But I remember at the time, because I had a cassette, like the VHS of that, of those particular episodes that he was in. So there's like 2 episodes on a VHS. And that was one of them. And then the other was Riddler's Reform, which is always why I've got a special place in my heart for that one, because even the riddles in that one, you know, the whole turning the paper upside down to say Ted Leslie, I was like, oh my God, we can do that. Wow. Yeah. You know, it's you know, one of those moments where as a kid, you're really excited, but then at the same time now you're thinking, but it's so obvious, Rob. Why didn't you think of that time? But my favorite episode overall is the Almost Got Him episode, which for me is the greatest concept alone, which is you four villains at a poker table playing, well, just they're playing cards.
Yeah.
And I even now, I think you mentioned this as well. Like, why isn't the Riddler at the table? You know, he could probably outsmart all of them, or even
Yeah.
bluff all of them in a game of cards. But again, it's the difficulty thing of, do you have the Riddler come in there to not tell a riddle, which is again maybe an interesting concept in its own right.
Yeah, and what I like about that, and there was a lot of different episodes that were in that same kind of vein, was it took a perspective on Batman, which again, if you know, being familiar with the old '60s show, was it was very formulaic. You know, the villain comes in, the villain of the week comes in, it sets up some elaborate crime. Batman's got to figure out, and they stop him, and there's some, you know, he's trapped in the middle, and then they cliffhanger to the next episode. And I think you get accustomed to that, and I think a lot of shows kind of follow a similar formula, kind of the procedural kind of style. But then there was a show, Here Comes Batman, and they would do episodes like that, which, yeah, it just blew my mind when you go, oh, here's what a different interpretation. I never would have thought of having a bunch of, what do the villains do when they're not, you know, not coming up with the next crime? Well, they're hanging out and they're swapping stories, and it was just such a neat take on it. Or, you know, episodes like the Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne, where they all get together to bid on his secret identity. I thought, what an interesting take on these characters, and that always kind of inspired me to go, what's a different perspective, or how, you know, different characters that you can focus on. Speaking of inspiration, that, you know, what, you know, you mentioned going to film school and studying film, and that, where did that initial inspiration come from? Was Batman always a through line in there, or was that a separate thing that you kind of came to?
It all goes back to when I discovered cinema, like when I first went to the cinema. And I grew up in East London, and at the age of 5, and I'm sorry if I'm showing my age here, I went to the cinema to see Toy Story, and that was the first film I ever saw in the cinema. And I went with my parents to that cinema, and having known that there was something really, there was complications with my father's health, and it was in the middle of that time that we decided to go. In the space of 81 minutes, I completely forgot that my father was diagnosed with cancer. And when you're watching a movie that takes you away from all of that, you know, about a cowboy who can't get on with a space ranger, and, you know, Buzz, you're flying, you know, this isn't flying, this is falling with style, you know, moments like that. And it's, you know, and you come out of it and you're just completely amazed, and you've forgotten everything that's going on around you. There's something really extraordinary about that. And, you know, I didn't realize that as a 5-year-old at the time, because that's just ridiculous. I was, you know, I was philosophizing as a child. I was so advanced. But I was, you know, and, you know, over time I discovered that. But sadly, so from his diagnosis, and in the middle of the week, and on the 11th day, he did pass away. And so I grew up with a single parent for most of my life. But around that time of discovering cinema and realizing that maybe film, or something to do with film, is what I want to do, I also discovered this guy. And that was through the animated TV series, for one thing, but it was also through the comics. So I've actually got here the very first comic I got as a child, which was Fatal Wish, and it's a story set in Crime Alley, and it's about the choices we make as a young child. And so it's a brilliant read, which I recommend to anyone who's a Batman fan, first of all, or not really, because maybe you might get into the character as well, like I did. But I saw this magnificent human being using grief and turning it into his greatest weapon, almost. You know, he wasn't letting it bury him down. You know, he was actually using it to lift himself up, you know, as it were. You know, what's that old what is it Michael Caine says, why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. It's very much that same feeling. And for me, and as corny as it might sound, but to me it was almost like having another father figure come into my life again, and having Bruce Wayne Batman teach me those ideologies about truth and justice, and what it means to be a human being that struggles both physically and also mentally, because when something is taken away from you which you think is unfair and it's not right, this character says that is part of life, but it doesn't have to be for everybody else. And I somehow over the years, I have over the years realized that that's what I can do as a storyteller, as a filmmaker. I can take audiences through an adventure where they can watch something and completely forget about the outside world and explore something completely different from their own, which is what exactly cinema did to me at such a young age.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. I mean, I can completely relate to those kind of feelings of seeing those movies and being transformed, and being just the escapism of it, and there is a power in that you don't find anywhere else. It's interesting that you mentioned about Batman being kind of a guiding light in your life, because and I think I shared this story before, but that was it was through Batman that I, strangely enough, discovered acting, and discovered that's what I wanted to pursue, because I grew up going to movies and watching stories, and just I wanted to be whatever it was that I saw. I wanted to watch Apollo 13. I wanted to be an astronaut. I watched it, Backdraft. I wanted to be a fireman. And I just went through this phase of like, I just wanted to do all these things. And it wasn't until I saw, I think it was Batman Forever, and I was 13 or 14 at the time. And I remember just, say what you want about the movie, but it was so encapsulating for me. I was just so drawn into that world and so excited. It was one of the first movies I remember being so excited about it coming out. And Jim Carrey is the Riddler, and the colors and the image. And at that point, I was a huge Batman fan from the cartoon, and going to see that. And I remember coming home and playing out in my front yard, and literally sitting there thinking through, how can I be Batman? Like, I want to be a superhero. Could I dress up and just go to town and stop? I was like literally like thinking through how I could do it. And then, quickly going, you can't do that. That's not real. And going, but I could be an actor. I could be an actor and play superheroes, or play an astronaut, or this week be, a detective, or be, I could do those different things. And I always go back to that moment with Batman, that I was like, yeah, Batman's been a huge influence even in that, to go, that really deciding what I wanted my career to be. I want to talk about your movie, and particularly because, I mentioned it earlier, is that what I love about it is that it is a different, it's a Batman fan film, but Batman's kind of a small element of the story, and it does focus on this narrow element of the Batman universe of Crime Alley, and this one family and a family unit, just a dad and a daughter, and I love that kind of different take on it, and it really changes the perspective. It's not through Batman's point of view, but you're seeing Batman through, the little girl, which I think is just, it's stories like that I really, really enjoy. So I just kudos to you for coming up with that, and choosing to take a perspective. I've seen a lot of Batman fan films that are just kind of recreations of, oh, here's Batman doing cool stuff. And you really kind of took it to a different level of changing the point of view altogether.
Well, thank you, first of all, for the kind words. I can't take all the credit myself. I mean, as much as I would like to, but it's a collaborative effort, of course,
Sure.
making a film. And, the cast and crew are as I've said many a time, they're basically an extension of my family, or should I say the Bat family, as it
Yeah.
were, I like to call them. But yeah, it's the whole different perspective thing just came about really, just very organically. So, for those who haven't seen the film is about a struggling single father trying to bring up their daughter in one of the most deprived areas in Gotham, Park Row, also known as Crime Alley, which is where Bruce's parents were murdered. And there is a lot of similarities within that story within my own story. And I wrote this screenplay back in 2017, having just lost my job, and thinking to myself, what am I going to do next? I lost my job. I don't have any income coming in, but I've also got to, pay my rent and do all these other different things. But I've also got to be, not just happy, but I want to be creatively happy, and for me, writing this script was just an exercise. And then you can see around me, apart from him that being the most obvious thing, but, there's these paintings here and some of the comics that I've got that he's around me. The Batman character is around me. So I just realized in that moment, in 80 years, we haven't really fully explored the idea of what it means to be a Gothamite in this city, but also a Gothamite who is struggling financially. And here we have a character who grown up in wealth and, uses his wealth to take down crime and, bring justice, of course. But what about the little people in Gotham? Where's the hope being brought out there? And that's where really the big story of Living in Crime Alley began. Just to bring it back to the animated series, I think you have no doubt that Appointment in Crime Alley is a key influence of this episode for me. Like, I love that episode. I do think it is flawed massively. And the reason why I say that is because for me, what Living in Crime Alley does, what I tried to do at least, was ask and answer a few questions about what it means to live in that area of Gotham, which I don't feel, and I think it's limited to its 22-minute runtime, about what it really means to be a Gothamite living in that area, because, it's such an important part of Gotham and to Bruce as well, that I, pun intended, wanted to bring it to justice. So
Yeah, and I think you had a great success with that, because I don't want to give away the ending, but the way that it's kind of a full circle moment, not just for the characters that we're following, but also for Batman. And I love the way that you presented that character in as a part of the story of the father and the daughter. And I think that it was absolutely, that could have been, you could have had that take place anywhere, but the fact that it's Crime Alley just kind of creates its own kind of narrative. And, and again, I think that that's what's great about that movie, is that it is, yeah, as a Batman fan, you can watch it, go, oh, this is great. And I pick up on all the little Easter eggs that you had in there with the Daggett apartment housing. It's, those kind of things are great. But I think just from a storytelling point of view, it also is just a great story and a great way of showing that side of Gotham. And my friend of mine once said, talking about Batman, that he's like, I think it's time that we just admit that Gotham has a crime problem. Like, because we don't, we see Batman and yeah, he's in this mansion and he's got all these cool gadgets and stuff. But yeah, there's absolutely this very real crime problem. And I think that the necessity of where that comes from, people don't just wake up one morning and go, I'm going to go commit a crime, but to explore like what poverty does to make those decisions, and what circumstances bring about those decisions, that these aren't just bad people doing bad things, but there's a real kind of motivation to it. And I think you explore that really well.
There is a big crime problem in Gotham, yeah, absolutely. But the one thing that most people do tend to say is, why would people want to live in Gotham anyway? If it's so bad, why would they want to live there?
Yeah.
This film answers the question because
Yeah.
sometimes we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have the choice in where we're brought up or where we can live. And that's where the motivation for that came in, for especially for the little girl in the film.
Yeah.
Here she is, she's been brought up in an environment where she has no control, but in the space that she's in, she is, the hero. She's the hope that she can bring in this very small rundown apartment, and then the bigger world of it all outside of this apartment is this grungy, dangerous, world. That for me was a key motivator. And the image for me is the young, it's simply just this. It's just a young fan looking up at their hero. And I for those who have seen the film, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. And Andy, you're nodding because you've seen it. So for me, it's the moment of, am I doing enough? Have I done enough? What can I do to be better? That's ultimately the question that Bruce in that moment has to ask himself. And then for the little girl, it's, I know who my true hero is. We said it earlier with cinema and the way films and when we watch things, it impacts us. Mm-hmm. When we see something and as children, we instantly take it into our brains and we ingrain them, but we also want to repeat it. You said earlier, I wanted to be the firefighter. I wanted to be the astronaut. I wanted to be. So clearly this little girl has seen extracts about Batman. She has seen maybe him out on the streets. I don't know, but she's seen something. She's inspired by it. She's heard of the bat signal, never seen it before. And it's that engagement right there. And on the flip side of it, when you've got this young, small child looking up at a 6'4" guy in a bat suit.
Yeah.
I had to treat Batman in this film like a classic horror movie character. To me, he is Nosferatu. He is the shadows. He is the creature of the night that you're not sure if he's quite there or if he's real or not, which I'm sure you would have noticed, but for those who watched the film, when the father comes out of the apartment, the first thing he does is look up into the sky. Yeah. Because he's not quite sure whether or not he exists as either. There is the element of fear there. So that for me was a key essential thing, was to create this element of fear and hope in two different spaces. Yeah. And in that moment with the two people and two characters standing in front of one another, that's when it all culminates. And that for me was a key image that kind of stuck throughout the entire film for me.
And I think that's what's those dualities that you don't. I think what's neat about it is that you don't think of those kind of going hand in hand of the sense of the fear that's being used to help or promote healing in a city, but also how that affects on the negative side of that. And like you said, that question of, am I doing enough, I think is a great through line of that. And I love those kind of movies that kind of look at a question from different points of view. And it's also amazing to me too that I recently went back and rewatched it again, knowing that I was going to be talking to you. And I was thinking through before watching it of different things that happened and the story and that. And I sat down to watch it again, and I was shocked that I was like, wait, this was only 8 minutes long, 8 and some change. That I'm like, there's so much in there in a such a short period of time that is, it's really quite amazing. And I think that some feature length films could take notes from you, just in the sense of like, that should be the goal. Like, how do we tell this story in as few words and using all elements? Like you said, just that him looking up in the sky says so much versus him doing an exposition and going, gee, I wonder if Batman's up,
Well, again, Andy, we've spoken about it quite a lot already, but that comes back to the animated series. They were, I have no problem saying this, but Paul Dini, Alan Burnett, Bruce Timm, and Shirley Walker, everyone as creative on that show were geniuses. They were able to collaborate together and create something so short and concise and bring something so, I'll say it, it's masterful. Each time that they do an episode, it is a masterpiece in storytelling, of how do you convey these characters as quick, how do you introduce them first of all as quickly as possible, but also how do you identify with them, how do you explore something that you hadn't explored with them before, because again there's that rich history of, for them it was 50 years or 60 years, and for us now it's 81 years of this character. So there's got to be there has to be something fresh each time.
Kind of digging into a little bit of the craft of that, is that for you, like, is that in the writing process that you start with this idea, get it down on paper, and then you start editing it down? Or is that, let's shoot it and then edit it in post and take out what's not needed, or try to look at it through the audience perspective? Where does that, at what point in the phase are you doing that?
As much as early as possible. So for me, when I start writing, writing is rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. It's until you get it right, and it works not just for yourself, but for someone who has no idea what the project is about. If the script is good, then we can go further on forward, and preparation is key within that. You can't make a good film out of a bad script. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. You might be able to make some good imagery, yes, but that can only get so far. It needs to have something grounded there. That's where, and I believe even now, I think we had 8 drafts of Living in Crime Alley before we went out into production. I should mention as well that the cast were a fantastic, they're fantastic actors that were brought into this adventure, as it were. And, there were certain lines in the script which we ended up cutting because they just didn't work in the moment. Because for me, that's a really important thing as well. And I think you'll agree as an actor as well, is playing the moment as truthful as possible. Giving the actors the freedom to play, for me, is such an important thing, is getting them the chance to actually bring something completely different. It's funny, I've got my directing, like my original pad, where I would hold this and be like, it's kind of like how do I say this without sounding too crude? Basically, it's more of a way of just, so I'll storyboard everything, I'll shot list everything, and then I will show the crew and everything else, and prep everything, and then on the day, the thing I'll do, and it may sound dramatic, I'll literally just drop it down on the floor and go, right, what can we find that's different, or what can we discover? Because there's a big difference in rehearsing something and prepping all this time, but when you're there in the moment, things will change. And with this film in particular, things did change, for sure. So certain lines would change, certain deliveries that I hadn't intended, but it's a more, completely different from what you totally imagined, but, for the better.
And a lot of that, and I think that's a big job of the director as well, is creating that environment on set. I think that almost solely rests on the director of helping to cultivate a positive, creative environment where everybody feels appreciated and feels valued towards the final vision, but also feels free to maybe make some outlandish choices, or to be a little bit daring in different spots, and feel safe and feel like I can try these things. And I think that again, walking on sets, that it's like there's some directors that are good at that, and there's some directors that aren't so good at that, and just it just creates a different working environment. Just listening to you talk about your crew, I feel like you embody that, of recognizing this isn't your movie, this is collectively we all came together and made this thing together, and it's not one person that owns all the credit for that.
No, absolutely. I'm one of those people that doesn't is not like, oh, me, whatever, blah blah blah. If you want to be that kind of person, then ultimately people will look at you and not want to work with you again,
Yeah.
frankly. So I'm one of those people, and as I said it earlier, like family for me is the key word there with the crew. Like they really were, some of the crew members I hadn't worked with before, some of the crew members I'd worked with for years, and we all have collectively two passions, which is film and storytelling, or actually three, I should say, because he's right there, and Batman.
Yeah.
We all collectively, love these three things, and you know that's what I want to create on set, is this passion and enthusiasm to actually be able to be proud of the work that you're doing while
Mhm.
you're out there. And I hate saying it like this, but at the same time it is probably the best way, is like playing.
Yeah.
We're there to kind of just play and create.
Yeah.
That's something I don't think a lot of people understand with our industry, is that it is this freedom to actually find and discover things. People might think of it as too much improvisation, but there has to be a nice balance between preparation and the freedom to just try try different things. Or probably the best way to say it is the permission to fail, to try out these things, because unless you try, you don't know.
I think you're right that it's something that we don't acknowledge enough as artists and as creators, that there has to be an element of trying and experimenting, and I know sometimes for me, I get caught up in the technical side of things, or the labor side of things, and sometimes you have to take a step back and go, wait a minute, I'm creating, I'm making this up. This isn't, I'm not building a house. I'm not, it is that there's a blueprint, but there's a guideline, there's a structure, and whatever creative endeavor that is, that if you get stuck in if you're painting a picture and you're just going, okay, well, I got to put this line here and this line has to go here and it has to be this color. Well, now you're just paint by numbers. Now you're just, now you're just following somebody else's creation. But it's like finding that freedom to go, you know what, this should be fun. It should be experimental. It should be a little risky. It should be just trying things. And again, full circle, going back to Batman the Animated Series, that for them to go, hey, what if we put this on black paper? That wasn't done. That wasn't a normal practice. And I'm sure people at the networks and stuff are going, no, that's not going to work. You can't do that. Well, give us a chance. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And then for Bruce Timm to do that opening sequence, and look what it created. And now it's something that we look back on and go, well, yeah, that looks so good. But at some point, that was a risk. That was something that, wouldn't have happened if they would have said, nope, that's not the way you do it. One of my biggest pet peeves in any kind of creative endeavor, whether it be theater or film or anything like that, is when somebody says, well, we've always done it this way, or this is what works. Hang on, let's try it. Let's try it some way different, and see what happens. Maybe we'll find something we never thought of.
Yeah, and you end up surprising yourself. That's
Yeah.
that's the great thing as well. Do you know what? That's probably the best feeling I have on a film set, is when you see a moment. Well, to bring it back to Crime Alley quickly, but there's a moment in the film which is probably the most Batman moment in the film.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there and watching what was going on, because I don't watch. I should mention, I don't watch the monitor. I watch next to the camera. So I watch the actors, and I watch the space in almost like theater, basically. But so I'm there with the actors in that moment when they're doing their thing. So then this big moment happens, the drape of the wings. People know what I'm talking about now. And it was the first take. And in that moment, I completely forgot where I was. And I remember someone giving me a nudge, like just thinking, are you okay? Like, kind of, are you all right? And I'm just thinking, and cut there. because then that was because I was waiting for something else to happen, but I knew that we were playing just to this moment, but that I was kind of swept away by, everything that was building up to that moment. It almost felt like that the 3 years, or the 2 years of, having written this script and then having prepped everything for a full year for this, because the film was only shot in a day and a half with a half a day of pickups. And to culminate in that moment and to even surprise yourself to go, okay, this could work. This could work. Because I should mention that prior to that moment as well, the crew kind of turned around to me and said, your idea of what you wanted to do is not going to work. We have to do it this way. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's go with it. I'm not going to argue about it because, I trust you, and the trust needed to be there. And I trusted them in that moment. And it, what you see in the movie, the film in that moment right there is the first take.
So I got to ask, so what's next for you? Are you working on anything? It's been a year now since the movie came out. So are you got anything else in the coming up?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's crazy even now just to say it's been a year. I mean, I think this is, this is kind of an overused phrase right now, but what a year it's been.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But, it's been an extraordinary, overwhelming journey with this film. If anything, it has been the thing that has kept me going during this year. Being able to do things like this, virtual talks and chats and virtual film festivals and networking has been extraordinary. And to meet fellow fans and chat about not only craft, but also our love and passion for Batman, the animated TV series, or Batman in general. And that has been really remarkable and, overwhelming, yes, but remarkable. And the difficult thing that I have to do now, which I have started doing, is start questioning what's next. What's the next? I like to say, and I don't want to sound pretentious as saying this, but what's the next journal entry that I'm going to be doing in terms of films? Because that's what they mean to me. They're like, extracts of a journal. And living in Crime Alley is a big chapter in my life. And already, this year I made a film while I was in lockdown. I made a short documentary, which is currently going through the film festival circuit, which is really cool. But it was both a storytelling challenge, but it was also a filmmaking challenge in its own right. How can I make a film in a lockdown environment? And that just comes down to resource-based filmmaking and the truth of a story. Yeah, so there's that film, but also I'd like to make the jump to feature now. I've had a script that I've been writing for the last 5 years, and it's a one-location film. It's based off my experiences of working in a particular shop, and I think it's going to be, that's probably going to be my next adventure, to be honest with you, is to make the big leap to feature film making. And if it's not that film, then it'll be another film. But, I have plenty of ideas rolling around, plenty of scripts and drafts that I'm going through at the moment. I've had plenty of time to do that, as well as grow a beard. That's not important to the conversation, but I thought I'd just mention that. But, I think the other thing I just wanted to say in regards to that is that, I've seen this as, I will be careful saying this, I've seen this year as a blessing in disguise to kind of reevaluate everything that's happened and everything that you've done to this point, and then think about where you want to go next. What's the next chapter going to be? And throughout this year, that has slowly and surely been, the move to feature, but also just to, be surprised, because another story might come around the corner and just hit me in the face and say, I want you to tell this story. I want you to pick up a camera and film it and bring some sort of truth to it.
Yeah. That's incredible. And that's so inspiring to hear you say that this, during lockdown and what's going on in the world, and I don't want to downplay the seriousness of what's going on, but I agree with you that there's an opportunity in that one to find new ways of being creative, to go, okay, it's not easy to get on set or to do large groups of people making a production, but I can write and I can dream and I can come up with other ways of being creative, and seizing the opportunity of this being a time to kind of explore different things. And I've been doing the same thing, is that there was a lot of things, and as you know, I do a lot of theater, and that's a lot of bread and butter for me. But that got shut down. I was in the middle of a show and it got shut down, and it really gave me, as disappointing as it was, gave me an opportunity to go, okay, how much of this am I choosing to do, and how much of the things that I'm involved in are just getting stuck in a kind of hamster wheel effect of like just going from this to this to this, and not being deliberate about what do I want to do next. And I think that what you said was so beautiful, is going, making that decision of it's time to jump to features, and really spending this time kind of focused on that, of like, here's what I want to do next, and I'm excited to see what you come up with next.
Thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate it, and I think I speak for everyone when I say this as well. But like, thank you for just just constantly creating during all of this, because first and foremost, you actually helped me to tell me what day of the week it is by Tuesday or Thursday that you've released a new video. But also, it's something to look forward to, and actually know that there's someone out there that's actually dissecting something that I love, and also just enthusiastic and passionate about what they do. And in the times that we're on now, there is so much negativity that we strive for a lot more positivity, and you do bring a lot of that in your videos that you've done, and not just in the videos that you've done, but also the work that you've done, like your recent film Stakeout. Like, I really enjoyed it. There's so much influence of Batman the Animated TV series in there, and particularly the lighting, which is so on point. And yeah, I can't commend you enough, basically, on keeping the positivity in an otherwise dark time that we're in.
Wow, I really appreciate that, Rob. That means a lot, because that is, that's something I strive for. Is that like I said, when I started the channel, it was just about like, this is something I enjoy, and what has kind of really blown me away is the quality of the fans that have kind of gravitated towards me, and just for that I like to keep it positive, and I like to keep consistent, and that's something that's I don't want to say comes easy for me, but it's something I'm very familiar with in the television world, of like, yeah, every week we put out a new video. So that's just what I do. And to hear that appreciated, and to hear, the type of work that I'm doing, means a lot. And I really appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. And I wish you the best, and all the health and safety your way as we, close out this year. It's been a real joy to connect with you in this way, and best of luck to you in the future.
And the same to you, my friend. Thank you so much for this. It's been an absolute honor. And say hi to the family for me. They don't know me, but say hi. And I hope they are well and safe. I hope that once this is all over, we'll get to meet face to face. And who knows, my friend, maybe even collaborate on something once again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I hope you enjoyed that conversation, and I want to do more videos like this where I get a chance to, where I can sit down and talk with other Batman fans and other people that have been influenced by Batman the Animated Series or Batman or comics or cartoons, any cartoons from the 80s and that, and kind of put some focus, put some spotlight on fellow friends. So if you enjoyed this video, please click that like button. If you want to see more episodes like this, just hit subscribe because I have new episodes coming out every week. We're also doing live streams now on Wednesday, watching along with some of our favorite episodes, so be sure to check those out as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode. I'll see you soon.